In this video I will be looking at the first of two piano pieces entitled Line Against Point from Book 2 of Mikrokosmos by Bela Bartok. Line Against Point was probably conceived as a bitonal work, that is, a work which makes use of two keys simultaneously. As we'll see, however, Bartok could have also composed this work using other methods. From a bitonal viewpoint, Line Against Point combines the first 5 notes or pentachord starting from the root note of the scale of E minor in the right hand with the pentachord starting from the root note of G minor in the left. In this way, the melodic material in each hand is framed by a perfect fifth interval. Because both pentachords are taken from a minor scale, the intervallic structure of each is identical. Bartok uses each pentachord in a variety of ways, which perhaps can best be explained using the terminology developed for 12-tone serial music. In its original form, beginning from the root note and proceeding to the 5th degree of the scale, the pentachord can be described as being in its principal or prime form. The prime form of the E minor pentachord is the main motif of this work. If the prime form is reversed, so that the pentachord now descends from 5th to 1st degree, it is said to be in retrograde. If the intervals of the prime form are inverted, it is in inversion. And if the retrograde is inverted, it is the retrograde inversion. Contrapuntally, Line Against Point is essentially constructed by combining these 4 forms of the pentachord, or variations of these forms, in different harmonic combinations. Different melodic combinations of these forms are also treated motivically and imitatively between the two hands. Because each form of the prime can be moved to other notes, we could analyze Line Against Point as using only a single pentachord which is transposed. The G minor pentachord, for example, can simply be heard as a transposition of the E minor pentachord, and vice versa. By choosing 2 intervallically identical pentachords as the basis for this work, Bartok can combine each in a variety of ways while still maintaining continuity between each pentachord and throughout the work as a whole. This continuity is achieved because the ear is more willing to accept the same intervallic pattern, even when it implies 2 different tonalities. Interestingly, if the notes of each pentachord are combined beginning on F sharp, they produce an 8-note scale, typically known as the Spanish scale. However, as mentioned previously, because of the structure and notation of Line Against Point, Bartok probably conceived it as a bitonal work rather than a work with a single tonal center or one using serialism as its basis. Because of this, throughout this video I will refer to each pentachord as belonging to 2 separate keys. Looking at the work now, as you can see, the E minor pentachord is used initially in bars 1 to 3 of the right hand. This pentachord entry uses the prime form, and the E root note is sustained under the melodic ascent to the 5th degree in bar 3. Against the right hand E minor entry, a G minor pentachord is used in retrograde, beginning on its 5th degree and descending to its root note in bar 3. The G minor pentachord's 5th note, D, like the root note of the E minor pentachord, is sustained through the first 3 bars and forms a major second interval with the right hand's E. The major second interval is sustained for most of the work's duration. Its inclusion is an example of the free use of dissonance between parts without regard for harmonic implications. This is not to say that Bartok or other modern composers necessarily wrote notes haphazardly on the page. Rather, it reflects the freeing of rules and the freer treatment of dissonance in many contemporary works. In earlier contrapuntal music, a major second and most all other intervals had very clear harmonic and often melodic implications. The individual parts of the texture therefore needed to behave in a certain way. When contrapuntal devices such as imitation, stretto, and canon were included in these works, The rules of strict and free contrapuntal writing still governed the individual contrapuntal strands, as well as the form and location of the contrapuntal devices. In contrast, modern contrapuntal works are more horizontally conceived, focusing more on the melodic strands and less on the resultant harmonic combinations. When imitation, stretto, and canon are utilized in these works, therefore, the resulting harmonic combinations are subordinate to these devices. Beginning in the right hand in bar 3, for example, the melodic figure formed between the 5th and 3rd degrees of the E minor pentachord is then transposed to G minor and imitated in the left hand in bar 4. This imitation proceeds along with the sustained major second between the E and D notes. Taking each bar in isolation, the implied harmony of bar 3 is an E minor 7th chord in first inversion. The first A note in the right hand is a passing note between the B and G notes, while the second A can be heard as an escape note. The implied harmony of bar 4 is a C dominant 9th chord in 4/2 inversion. As you can see, the harmonies of these bars are formed purely as a result of the combination of the imitative figure and the sustained E and D notes, and are not functional. To attempt an analysis of this work from a functional harmonic standpoint, therefore, would be unnecessary. I only mentioned it here to further illustrate the subordinate role which harmony has when compared to the all-important influence of melody and the use of contrapuntal devices. Beginning in bar 5, the first 4 notes, or tetrachord, of the E minor scale are used ascending, and this idea is then used in the left hand in bar 6, this time ascending in G minor. The retrograde of the E minor tetrachord is used as the counterpoint to the G minor ascent in bar 6. In this bar, the vertical interaction of the notes between the ascending and descending tetrachords produces an octave, major 6th, augmented 4th, and major 3rd intervals, which, apart from the augmented 4th, are not too different from the type of intervals you would find in first species tonal counterpoint. In many other bars also, the vertical interaction between notes often produces consonant intervals. It must always be remembered, however, that in this work the sustained major second adds further dissonance to these consonant combinations. Imitation, following at a bar's distance between the right and left hands, continues through bars 5 to 8 and ends here, where the opening pentachords from bars 1 to 3 are again used, this time with some variation. Here, for example, the counterpoint to the initial E minor ascent is a descending perfect 4th interval located between this C and G. This descending 4th imitates the descending 4th found in the right hand in bar 8. The presence of this G, which is tied into bar 10, causes the G minor retrograde to be slightly altered by delaying the arrival of the C note until the second quarter note beat of the bar. In the right hand of bar 11 also, the arrival of the B, the top note of the E minor ascent, is delayed by a quarter note beat, which effectively swaps the order of the notes B and A from their initial presentation in bar 3. This delaying technique is a simple but effective means of creating subtle variation between an otherwise identical repetition of bars. In bar 12, the delaying of parts is continued as one of the E notes in the right hand rests for a half bar before both E's begin on quarter note beat 3. In the left hand also, the perfect 5th between the notes G and D is tied from bar 11, delaying the sounding of the sustained D note until quarter note beat 2 of the bar. The contour of this left hand quarter note figure, which also begins on the sustained D note, is taken from the left hand of these bars. In these bars, however, the duration of the C and G are altered, and these notes are repeated before the rest in bar 16. Against the left-hand figure in bars 13 to 15, Bartók repeats the right-hand ascending E minor tetrachord initially used in bar 5. This repetition culminates in a climactic B half note at the beginning of bar 16, which extends the E minor tetrachord to a pentachord in its prime form. This left-hand ascent imitates the prime of the E minor pentachord, but omits the initial note. The imitation begun by the prime pentachords in these bars continues until here. Notice that here Bartók prolongs the duration of this D note, thereby delaying the arrival in the left hand of the final descending figure first heard here in the right hand. Against the left hand imitation in these bars, the right hand uses this motif taken from bar 7. As you can see, here in bar 20, Bartók inverts the motif in the left hand, but begins the inversion on the note D instead of E. Had Bartók begun the inversion on the same E note to produce an exact mirror inversion, it would compromise the bitonality of the work, as the inversion would be in the same key as the motif. This can be seen in this example, where the motif is inverted starting from the E note. Notice that the pitches of this inversion produce a B natural instead of a B flat, thereby moving the inversion out of the key of G minor. In bar 21, the prime form of the E minor pentachord is used against the retrograde of the G minor pentachord. In other words, the G minor pentachord can be heard as an inversion of the E minor pentachord, but starting on D. Here again, an exact mirror inversion is not used, as the resulting left-hand pentachord would be in the key of A major instead of G minor. Bartók completes the work with the bare fifths of each pentachord played in both hands. This completes our look at the use of contrapuntal techniques in Bartók's piano work, line against point. Remember that this is only one example of the ways in which contrapuntal techniques and devices are used in modern contrapuntal music. Other composers may use these techniques and devices in slightly different ways. However, the emphasis of the melodic aspect over the harmonic, as well as a freer use of dissonance, is common to the majority of modern works. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.